Hi, I'm Duncan, and I am here with Tim and Donna today. Tim and Donna has been good friends of ours for many years, and we're doing a little tribute today for their son, James. James passed basically 20 years ago, and that's when we really got to know Tim and Donna. And Donna, I never got to meet James, so can you tell me a little bit about him, what he was like as a youngster, and then maybe a little as he got older? And Tim, just chime in whenever you want.
Well, James just loved life. He was fun. He was a mama's boy. He liked to just be silly wherever he was. He got in trouble a lot at school when he got a little older, just because he was kind of a class clown. He just loved life. He loved doing stuff. He loved people. He loved music. And he loved his mom. And, oh gosh. He had dreams of making the most money he possibly could by doing the least amount of work he possibly could. And he used to always would tell Tim about how he was going to take over his business one day.
Wow.
And he was going to do very little work, but make the business grow big. So he had big dreams. And anyway,
his idea of, I had this small business of working on boat motors, and he wanted to, set up in a big office behind a great big desk, probably smoking cigars and giving orders while everybody, that was his dream.
Right.
Yeah.
But James loved family. He loved family, and we always felt like James was the glue that held this family together, and we struggled with how we were going to do that without him. And sometimes we still struggle with that. He had very close relationships with all of his siblings. I don't know of any that he didn't have a close relationship with. But he got in trouble. He would get in trouble because he couldn't get by with anything, which is part of the reason why I was able to see him the last day he was alive. It was because he'd done something really stupid, and I had to drive him to work. And so, but anyway, he had a great heart. Unfortunately, he had a great big heart, and that's what we didn't know. And that was part of why he passed, is because his heart was large, physically and.
If I remember right, you drove him to work one day, and
I did,
having no clue that he had, I guess it was a heart issue, was it not? And you dropped him off, and I know in a tribute thing or something that I had read that you wrote, there was something different about dropping him off that day. Can you tell me about that?
He was not feeling well. He told me he didn't feel well, but he wanted to be at work. He wanted to do the right thing and go to work. And I don't know. When he went into work, I was very overwhelmingly sad. And I sat in the parking lot for a long time. And I never realized that was going to be the last time I would see him.
Yeah.
That was, October 16th, 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
wow. And James was 20, and he was really stepping up his game. He was, holding down a job. He had met a girl. They were talking about getting married. She was pregnant when they met, and he took on that child. The child was born, probably, I guess, how old was she when he died?
10 months.
10 months. So 10 months. For 10 months, he was that child's dad, and he totally stepped up. He started working. He was already working, but he started working seriously and just stepped in. And he was great with kids. Everywhere we went, if there was kids, they would just gravitate to him, And
he was kind of a big kid himself.
He was, and he would have everybody laughing. Any place he went, you know, people would, he was just funny. He was always just, you know, witty and funny and silly and goofy. And that's why he got in trouble a lot, because he, like Donna said, he was a class clown. He liked to goof off it. But, you know, he was, you know, we were proud of him. He was really growing up.
Yeah. Can you describe to me what you felt when you got that call? Did they just tell you he was at the hospital, or did you know that he had passed? Or because
no, I did not know.
Okay.
They were asking questions. I got the call from his girlfriend. I think it was Jen who called me. And so they're asking questions about seizures, and do seizures run in the family? And apparently he was sitting down not feeling well. He had called her and asked her to come and get him. And while he was waiting for her, he started seizing, and he fell off the chair onto the floor and died. And they called the ambulance, and they said the ambulance was there very quickly, but he was already DOA at the hospital. We did not know that.
He worked less than 5 minutes from the hospital.
Yes. And
yeah.
Wow. Do you remember much about that time at the hospital? Is it all just a blur, or
no? I remember.
You do remember?
I remember it well. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we showed up, and I was just expecting him to be either in the emergency room or in a room, and I was asking where my son was. And a lady chaplain came and got me and took me to a little room off to the side. And later I knew that she already knew, and that's why she was watching.
You know, when and I think both of us, we had no idea that James was dead. When Donna called me and told me they took James to the hospital, you know, I'm thinking low blood sugar, or, you know, just something, because there was, you know, he's 20 years old. He had no health problems. And she just took him to work that morning. So I just figured, you know, he just got sick and maybe blacked out or something. And I can remember specifically. In fact, I rode my motorcycle to the hospital, and I can still just remember that ride. And I don't know why, but it was very vivid. And walking into that hospital is very clear. But even then, I'm thinking, and when they ushered us into this room, I'm thinking he must be in pretty bad shape, you know, because this is pretty serious.
Yeah. Did you, during that time, and I remember Elaine and I actually came to the hospital, and it's awkward to be that other person, because you don't know if the family wants you around or does it, but you want to support them. You know, how did you feel about that? Did you like the fact that people were around, or would you rather have just been left alone? And I guess that could change depending on the particular family's personality.
I loved that you guys came. I do know that you guys came to pray for him, I believe.
You didn't know he was
right.
He'd already died when you got the call.
Right. Right.
And yeah, even after that, I wanted people. I wanted to be around people.
Okay.
And I loved that people cared enough to come. So yeah.
So you did find comfort in that.
Oh, yes.
Good.
In fact, I'm sure you remember, we knew you from Christian Motorcycle Association, and I had met Elaine, but that's where Elaine and Donna met, was that day at the hospital.
Right. So, Tim, you brought up the Christian Motorcyclist Association, and I guess it would be obvious to the viewer from that both of our families are families of faith, and faith is very important to us.
Yes.
Was James a Christian?
Yes. James, he always had a tender heart toward God. He, you know, like most kids, he I mean, he grew up and going to church, youth group, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But he took it pretty serious, and it was. I had just been going through some evangelism training, probably, I don't know, within a month before James died, and I was just practicing on him just to see where he was at, because we were pretty close, but his life wasn't perfect, and we've always prayed for our kids that when they do something wrong, they'll get caught. And God answered that prayer, and he has on all 5 of our kids. In fact, I think one of the kids at one point in time mentioned,
I'm sure they love you for that.
They can't get by with it. Yeah.
That was probably Heather.
Yeah. But, yeah, and, he had faith. He had a tender heart and a tender conscience toward God. And he when he wasn't walking things out like he should, he knew it, and it bothered him. And I believe that James is with Jesus today. He totally put his faith and trust in Christ. And if we had to have our lives perfect to go to heaven, then I'm afraid none of us are going.
Yeah, so, that would leave most of us out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Bible actually says all, right? So,
yeah.
Knowing that he had faith, knowing that, and did that make it easier with the passing, or was it? I mean, I assume that it would, but then again, I've never lost a child, so do you find comfort in that?
In time. Oh, much. And in time it did. I mean, in the moment, it was devastating. It was
right.
an inability to move on, not knowing how I could move on.
Right. Okay.
And it was, yeah. But yes, in the time it did. And, I don't know if you want me to share, but later, down the road a little bit, a few months out, I did have a dream. I don't know that it was a dream. And James came back to tell me goodbye.
Wow.
And I feel like that was a little gift from God. And I felt his touch still when I woke up. And it was just him and I. He had come back very specifically to tell me goodbye. And when I woke up from that dream, I realized that his back was no longer hunched. It was very straight. Wow. And that was very beautiful, and I was very excited. Yeah. And then God would never let me see him again after that. I begged God to let me see him again. He would never let me.
Were you ever angry with God?
Never.
That our question, why, God, why did you let this happen when you could have stopped it?
I did not.
Yeah.
We've been surrounded by a lot of people who've lost, and I never did question God.
Yeah.
I think there's part of me that was afraid to question God.
Right.
I kind of had a fear of that. But I don't know why, but I had more than one person say I would be angry with God. I said, I can't be angry with God because I need him now more than I ever needed him.
Yeah.
And if I'm angry with God and I turn my back on God, where do I go?
Yeah.
Right.
Like Peter said, where else can we go?
Yeah.
Right.
Getting back to, that reminds me of, back in that situation in the room at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And when the doctor came in and got down on one knee and took Donna's hand and said, I'm sorry, we did everything we could. And that was when we found out that James had died. And,
yes.
In that moment, there's so much goes through your mind. It's like all the stuff we fret and stress over in life. It's like none of that matters, when you get news of something like this.
Wow.
And I'm sure maybe somebody watching this has gotten some news they didn't want.
I'm just curious, what would you say today? what would you say to someone that's just lost their child?
Wow, that's a hard one, because there's just no words. We were surrounded, and we're thankful. In fact, that's one of the things before a little technical difficulty, I was going to share that when the doctor came in and took Donna's hand, I started praying, and I said, Lord, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know what to do. And I felt the Lord speak to me very clearly, not audibly, but it was just the verse, give thanks, and all things give thanks. And
wow.
That's what got us through. Giving thanks that we had 20 years. We've met people that lost 2-year-olds, babies, 8-year-olds, and so forth. Give thanks that we still have 4 other children. Give thanks that we have each other, that we have faith, that James had faith, that the church and our ministry we were involved with at the time, all these people had surrounded us, and a lot of people were just so there for us, and we wanted people around us. Some people try to lighten it, and I would say don't. If I was going to give advice to somebody that's don't try to change the subject about the weather, the sports, or whatever, because that's the last thing you want to talk about. At least for us, all we wanted to talk about was James. But if I could give any words of comfort, in fact, a friend that we used to ride with, Mike, he had lost his dad probably with, I don't know, a year or so before we lost James. And he came over one evening, probably within a couple of weeks after James passed, and he said something to me. He said, he goes, this probably won't mean anything to you right now, but he said, all the pain will turn into fond memories. And he was right. It meant absolutely nothing. But I mean, I knew Mike loved us and cared for us, and it didn't, it didn't hurt my feelings or anything. It just it didn't help. You know what I'm saying? But as the years went on, here we are 20 years down the road, even at 5 years down the road or whatever it was, I remember thinking that was probably one of the most accurate things anybody said, and truthful, because the pain does subside. You don't get over it, you get through it. And the memories we have, and I would just encourage someone or comfort someone in saying that you will not forget the sound of their voice. You will not forget their laughter. You won't forget the quirky things that irritated you or all that stuff. It's amazing. 20 years, and we have no video really. One of his friends has some little bit of video of them goofing around, but even having no video, I can, and I'm sure Donna would agree with me, I can still hear his laugh and the goofy wisecracks he would make, all that. He lives on in our hearts. So I would say be comforted if it's possible to even, when you lose a child or I can't relate to anything else. I mean, other than my mother, and you lost your mother, but a child, there's just no.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
No, there's just no words. There's nothing. You can't fix it.
If I
Sure.
can interject a little bit, my most fond, not fond, nothing was fond then, but my favorite visitor was a lady that I was really good friends with, her sister, and I knew her through her sister. And she came by and she said, I came to wash your dishes. And she said, but you don't have any dishes. And she sat in the rocking chair and she didn't talk.
Yeah.
Really. She just sat there and she rocked and she visited. And she was my favorite visitor.
Wow.
Because she was just here. She didn't try to tell me anything. She didn't try to make me feel better, but she just came. And that was what I needed most. I needed people to be here and to just love me, and let me talk if I wanted to talk. And, but I have told people
that grief has no time on it. Don't let anybody tell you, you should by now be doing this or this or this. You can take 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But there's no time. You're never going to get over it. And those are words I didn't like either. As someone said, yeah, it takes a while to get over something like that. And
has time helped?
You don't want to hear those.
Has time helped? I mean,
Yes.
people say that all the time, and I know when it's fresh, that probably seems ludicrous, but
Right. Time does heal, but there still are very hard times. You never just get over it. And I remember meeting a lady who was very involved with bereaved parents, and she's opened the door, let me come in to her home, and she said, it's been 10 years for us. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even want it to be 10 days. And I couldn't even imagine that it could ever be 10 years. And or 10 months or anything. I didn't want the time to pass. That was my biggest thing, is I didn't want that gap of time. And now it's been 20
we're
years.
just actually hours away from being 20 years.
There's no gap. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's no gap. If you walked in right now and said, hey Mom, I would recognize his voice instantly. And actually he nicknamed me, and he's how I got the nickname Tim's wife. So
that's funny.
Apparently he was trying to get my attention for a while. Then he went, Tim's wife. And I said, what did you just say? And he said, I've been calling Mom for like 5 minutes. He said, so I just said Tim's wife. And that became my nickname.
That's funny.
And her email too.
And her email.
That's my everything. Yes.
Yeah. So after all this time, do you like people to bring his name up? Does it? Because I think sometimes people are a little bit afraid because they're thinking, well, I don't want to, bring up painful memories or whatever, but I'm guessing you have those memories every day. So it really doesn't matter. So does it help? Do you like or appreciate when people remember him?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will talk about James anytime you let me. I love to talk about James. I love when people remember him. Yes. Yeah.
I have a question, and I'm going to just read it off. I wrote it down here, and maybe, again, another strange question, but how important is it to survivors to know that their loved one was ready for heaven and to know that they are in the presence of Jesus? And I know we touched on that a little bit, but
yeah.
I think that brings comfort, even if you don't have, not all of our children have relationship with Jesus, that. I still think that brings them comfort that they're not even aware of.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I know my oldest daughter even told me recently that I had the health issues, and we didn't know what the tests were going to show. And she tearfully told me that she knew that if it was bad, that she found great comfort in knowing that I would be with Jesus.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I was blessed by that. Very blessed.
That's the most important part. In fact, our prayer after James died was that his death wouldn't be in vain. And I think I shared with you that we had wrote a gospel tract, and we got to see those we actually got to hand them out in a prison, and it was amazing the response from young men would read it, and just the genuine concern for us, and we got to see that use in a lot of ways.
I would also say that, I mean, I think it's the most important thing we can do is go to heaven.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. I mean, everything, you look around, everything in our life, whether it's your children, your parents, your spouse, your house, your wealth, whatever it is, you're going to lose it. Eventually, everything we can see and touch is going to go one way or the other. The only thing that can't be taken away from us is our relationship with the Father, our relationship with, the Father through Jesus Christ. And that's anybody that might be watching this, I would encourage you to get that right, to look into that. If you don't know, don't just, most people today will spend more time trying to figure out where to go to college, what car to buy, what thing to invest money in, what kind of career, whatever. They'll spend all kinds of time and looking into all these things, but their eternal faith, they'll just leave it to, well, I was raised this way or that way, or somebody offended me at that church, so I don't believe that way anymore, or whatever, and Paul tells us in the Bible to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, and I don't believe that means we work for our salvation, but I think we need to work it out and know, God saves us by His grace when we put our faith in Him, but we need to know. And if I could just shift gears a little bit, if you lost someone and you don't know, maybe they weren't walking it out, you also don't know, God is gracious.
Yes.
I people asked me before, because they know I'm a Christian and I've done some pastoring, they'll ask, you think my loved one's in heaven? Well, there's no way I can know that, because they could walk a perfect life and look like a Christian and not be one. But what we don't know is what goes down between that person and God in those last minutes. Even if somebody has spent their whole life walking away, because look at the thief on the cross, right? He gave his heart to Christ in the last, hours of his life, last minutes, whatever. So, we can still hope in that. And God His mercy is new every morning, and His grace is sufficient. And that's the things I've learned from walking through this, is that, His grace is enough.
If you've lost a loved one and you're not sure, I think there's always hope. And I just believe there is. And something that my dad always said, if you can think, you can pray. And we know there's been several instances, even just here recently within our own circle of influence, where somebody was, everyone thought they were completely unconscious and in a coma and couldn't understand anything, but they did. And they came back out of it and said, I heard everything. I just couldn't respond. I couldn't move. The thing is, that person could still think. And if you can think, you can pray. And thankfully, it doesn't take a big, long prayer. And it doesn't take, 5 verses of just as I am and, all of that sometimes us church people think that goes into it. It just doesn't. It can just be that split second. So, yes.
It's a change of heart, right?
Yes. So, is there anything else you guys would like to add that we've not touched on? I've probably taken this a different direction than what you were thinking.
We just wanted to share really comfort with people. We want to honor our son. But go ahead.
Can I just say one thing that happened to me that I just remembered? James died in October, and there was a women's retreat in November. And I went, and I was like, what am I doing, God? What am I doing? I just want to go home. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. I don't want to worship with these women. I don't want to, do anything. I just want to go home. And I was hurting so bad. And a friend of mine, and I've told her this, I've seen her since, and I don't even know where she lives. She moved many years ago, but I did get a chance to tell her. But she came up to me, and I didn't know her that well at the time. And she came up to me and she said, Donna, God told me to tell you that this is not your time. to worship. This is your time to grieve. And I took a breath and I was able to go, oh God, thank you. Because I thought I was supposed to be worshiping in that worship service. And God said, it's okay to not be having your arms up worshiping me. It's okay to grieve.
That's powerful.
And I think that might be something that I would share with someone is, and I have before actually said, you don't have to, God is a merciful God, and he's filled with grace and mercy, and he knows that you need to grieve. And so anyway, that blessed me. I never ever forgot it. And that's been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And she knows who she is if she
That's
watches
powerful.
this. Diana.
Well, I guess we probably could keep going for a while, but we probably ought to.
We got 20 years.
Yeah.
We've had 20 years, so we probably could.
We'll say bye for now. And tonight, let's commit to say a prayer for those that have lost loved ones, lost close friends, family, a spouse, young or old. It's still painful. And even though we don't know their names, we don't know who they are. God does. And let's try to be faithful to pray for them.